Hello everyone. We're going to continue discussing the question answers for History Chapter 2, Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. How was the Russian economy and society at the beginning of the 20th century? At the beginning of the 20th century, the vast majority of Russia's people were agriculturists. Like I already told you that Russia was dominantly an agriculturist society. About 85% of the Russian population earned their living from agriculture. Industry was found in pockets. Prominent industrial areas were St. Petersburg and Moscow. So this means dominantly Russia was an agriculturist economy. However, there were certain areas where industries came up and they were St. Petersburg and Moscow. Many factories were set up in 1890s. When Russia's railway network was extended and foreign investment in industry increased. So when the railway was extended and foreign investment increased, more factories were set up. By the 1900s, in some areas, factory workers and craftsmen were almost equal in number. Workers were a divided social group on the basis of skill. So although all of them were workers, they were still a divided group depending on the basis of the skill they had. Metal workers were considered aristocrats among other workers because it requires specific skill. Women made up 31% of factory labor by 1914 but were usually paid less than men. Division was also among workers on the basis of dressing and manners. Despite divisions, they united themselves when they disagreed with employers about dismissal or work conditions to stop work. These strikes took place frequently in the textile industry during 1896-1897 and in the metal industry during 1902. So, in the industries, we know workers were a divided lot depending on the skill they had. Some were skilled whereas some were unskilled. Women were paid less than men. However, all these workers who had internal differences united against their employers when they demanded better wages, less working hours and better working conditions. This was the condition in the cities where the industries came up. Now, what was the condition in the countryside? Peasants cultivated most of the land, but nobility, the crown and the Orthodox Church owned large properties. Like workers, peasants were also divided. Russian peasants wanted the land of the nobles to be given to them. Now, in the countryside, what was happening in Russia is very similar to what was also happening in France before the French Revolution. In Russia, the church was very dominant and so was the nobility and the crown, and they used to extract taxes from the people. The peasants, of course, wanted the lands of the nobles because they barely had any land themselves. Frequently, they refused to pay rent and even murdered landlords. So the peasants they used to keep protesting. And their protest used to go on in the form where they used to not pay rent and sometimes even murder the landlords. In 1902, this occurred on a large scale in South Russia, and in 1905, such incidents took place all over Russia. Name the socialist parties formed in Russia. The Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party was founded in 1898 by socialists who respected Marx's ideas. The peasants formed the Socialist Revolutionary Party in 1900. So two parties were formed. One was formed by the workers, that was called the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party, and another party was formed by the peasants, and that was called the Socialist Revolutionary Party. How were the socialists divided in Russia? Peasants in Russia formed the Socialist Revolutionary Party in 1900. This party struggled for peasants' rights and demanded that land belonging to nobles be transferred to peasants. Some felt that peasants were not one united group, some rich, some poor, some laborers, while some were capitalists. So this differentiation within them did not make all of them a part of the socialist movement. So one way the socialist parties were divided in Russia was on the basis of where they were formed. Were they formed by the workers or were they formed by the peasants? Because if the party was formed by the workers, then they demanded better wages, better working conditions and less working hours. If the Socialist Party had been formed by the peasants, then their demands were different. Their demands were that they should have more land under them so they can cultivate more crops. And also that the rent should be reduced and they should not have to pay so many taxes. The socialist parties were also divided on the basis of organization. The Bolsheviks were led by Vladimir Lenin. He thought that in a repressive society like Tsarist Russia, the party should be disciplined and should control the number and quality of members. So the Bolsheviks are a more radical group. The other group were the Mensheviks. They thought that the party should be open to all. Later when we've already finished the chapter, and when we're having a look at the chapter and we saw the October Revolution of 1917, we saw how it is the Bolsheviks under Lenin who will go on to take power in Russia. What was the 1905 revolution? The Russian public wanted an elected parliamentary government, but the Tsar was not agreeable to that. Liberals, social democrats, socialist revolutionaries, peasants, workers, jihadists, nationalists, all of them campaigned against the state of affairs and demanded a constitution and revolution on 1905. In 1904, and we know, however, what did the Tsar do? The Tsar did elect a parliament. He formed the Duma. In 1904, prices of essential goods rose so quickly that real wages declined by 20%, making Russian workers' livelihoods difficult. So, Russian currency lost its value and things became very expensive and people became miserable. When 4 members of the Assembly of Russian Workers were dismissed at the Putilov Iron Works, there was a call for industrial action. Over the next few days, over 100,000 workers in St. Petersburg went on strike, demanding a reduction in working days and an increase in wages and improvement in working conditions. When the procession of workers led by Father Gapon reached the Winter Palace, it was attacked by the police and Cossacks. So we know that these protesters, they were led by Father Gapon. However, when they reached the Winter Palace, they were attacked. This incident came to be known as the Bloody Sunday. Over 100 workers were killed and about 300 wounded. This incident was named as Bloody Sunday. Strikes took place all over the country and universities were closed down because students campaigned about the lack of civil liberties. Doctors, lawyers, engineers and other middle-class families established the Union of Unions and demanded a constituent assembly. During the revolution, the Tsar allowed the creation of an elected consultative parliament or Duma. However, the Tsar dismissed the first Duma within the 76 days and re-elected a second Duma within 3 months. He changed the voting laws and packed the third Duma with conservative politicians. So the Tsar was supposed to listen to the Duma, take its advice. However, he dismissed the first 2 Dumas, and the third Duma he packed with his own conservative men who supported him. So the Duma was actually pretty useless because it was not able to guide the Tsar as it should have been, and the Tsar never paid any attention to the Duma. And also, since the Tsar had put his own men in the Duma, they never really opposed anything he did. Thank you.